Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Gotham. Okay, so quite a few things to break down in this episode. Obviously, the whole situation is around the fact is that Jim got shot. Interestingly enough, around the time, Jim is trying to get all the gangs to stop fighting because basically they want to show, like, everyone, they're like, hey, we're ready, Gotham is ready for unification. It's not as crazy and all that. But the thing is, like, Lee was kind of against it because it's like, hey, you got me and you got this baby on the way, which that in itself is just a crazy situation all on its own. But the fact is, for her, it almost feels like you are constantly, you won't be satisfied until you die, because for him, it's like he keeps, putting everyone else's situation first, even under these circumstances. Like, you're a soon-to-be father, yet you're still rushing to, put your life on the line for other people. But, I mean, to be fair, that's just who Jim is. But I think it's also because Jim wants to save the city because it's his home, but also for him, I think and it plays into this episode, is because he's guilty. He feels guilty about a lot of stuff that went down in his life. He feels responsible, especially because, like, for every person he has failed to save, he tries 3 times as hard just to make up for it so that no one else has to die. So, like, he's trying to save everyone because to make up for the people he couldn't save in Haven. Obviously, he doesn't really tell people that, but that's what's kind of like bubbling beneath the surface. I love it. Turns out the person, because it's like, okay, so who's the person behind it and everything. I love that Harvey came in there, bam, punched Penguin in the face, and then punched him in the stomach too, because it's like, you had something to do with it. He's like, no, you idiot, because the shot obviously came from the outside. The bullet says VZ. I'm like, Victor Zsasz. I was like, oh, Zsasz being set up, and he shows up shooting at the cops. I'm like, oh, you coming after, like, I was an idiot being like, oh, maybe he's coming after Jim for a different reason. Maybe he wants to settle the score this time, and it just so happens he's like, wait, someone, because I thought the thing was going to be like, oh, wait, someone's coming after Jim? Oh, I guess my job's a little done. I thought that was going to be the twist, but it's like, no. And I love Zsasz being like, oh, what's on your breath, Harvey? It's like, the fact is, like, and he's like, I'm going vegan now. I'm like, what? And then he's up there saying all this stuff. I'm like, he's like, have you ever taken time to smell the roses? I mean, he's like, they're great. And they smell great. And it's just kind of like, Harvey pieces it together. It's like, oh, he got ivied, which is so interesting. And I love that he's there being like, oh yeah, like Ivy, I couldn't say her name. I'm not supposed to say her name, but I'm going to say her name because it's so great. Ivy Pepper Zsasz. Oh, that sounds so great. I'm like, I love that they gave, I feel like Zsasz has always been a little quippy in the past, but I feel like this season they really amped it up. Just in the 2 episodes he's been in so far, he's always had like these, like just every word out of his mouth is just like, wait, what? And I love it, because him being like, oh man, I'm wondering what Ivy's doing right now. The fact of the matter is, I'm just a distraction while she goes to kill James Gordon. I was like, maybe I shouldn't have said that. Oh well. It's just kind of interesting seeing, like, the psychopath in him mix with the psychopath that, Ivy kind of bolsters up, in his mind. It's just like 2 warring sides of psychopath. It's just kind of interesting to see how that kind of, like, meshes together. I even love that line from Victor being like, oh yeah, he's talking to the cop that's in the room with him, and he's like, Jeff, one day you're going to have someone important in your life like that. Another cop comes in who's under Ivy's control, shoots him in the head, and then Victor's like, or not. And just, like I said, it's just the lines he had is so good. But I thought it was kind of interesting, the whole Ivy situation. It didn't even correlate in my head to think that those 2 things were connected. Because obviously earlier in the episode, Ivy ends up snatching up Bruce, but I was like, oh, I thought that was kind of unrelated. It didn't click in my head until, like, the way Victor was acting like that and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, he got Ivy. So I was like, oh, this is all part of her plan. Which is interesting, because later when it comes up, it's like, why did you go after Jim? What did he ever do to you? Which I'm like, well, she did kind of harbor feelings for him about the whole killing her dad thing. But I was like, oh, it just seemed like that kind of came out of nowhere. It's like, no, it's because of the reunification. Because if they... just like Jeremiah had his reasons for trying to stop it, so does she. Like, she's trying to stop the reunification because it's like, because Jim's trying to save all these people, but it's like, by saving all these people, he's going to reduce Gotham back to what it was before, in the sense of, like, it's just, oh, we're going back to that society filled with pollution and people and disgust. And so for her, it's like, if she gets rid of Jim, she kind of stops the reunification, because he's kind of the leading force behind it. But then there's also the fact is that, it's like she wants, Gotham to go back to where it was, controlled by the plants and stuff like that. So that was interesting. I also love that she tried to tell Selena, like, oh, like, the fact is, I guess why she harbors, well, her and Selena already had issues beforehand. So I guess this is her kind of like like the way things kind of left off between them in season 4. I think that's kind of where she's harboring a lot of that hate towards Lee. But I think it might also come from the fact is like with that plant inside of her, she didn't come over to her side. So I think maybe that pissed Ivy off too. It's like, wait, you're still not on my side after everything. So it's like, forget it, you're a complete and utter lost cause. But Selena was like, yeah, me getting here isn't just because of you. You didn't make me strong. I made myself strong. I got back up on, you know, like, yes, your plant helped and everything, but I got back on my own. I mean, she even seems like she's completely under control, which is interesting. I'm curious to see, is that something that will ever pop back up, or is it because she kind of fought her darkness and kind of made it kind of through on the other side that she's okay, or is that just going to be something she's always going to be dealing with potentially? I don't know. We'll kind of have to wait and see in that regard. But this episode also presented a very interesting thing about Bruce, because Bruce was kind of like, you know, he has his date with Selena, which is kind of cute. He's like, you know, is that okay with you? And she's like, maybe. And I'm like, oh, it's just kind of cute and adorable. He's setting the scene, candles and stuff like that. They're eating together. It's just, I don't know. It's like, for most of the series, you can't help but go like, oh, that's cute. Anytime, like, you know, they've been together so long, you know, they've had their on and off moments, but anytime they're together and just things are happening between them, you're like, oh, that's so cute. Young love, you know, it's adorable, and it just, you know, I don't know. I guess it's interesting to me just because you know how complicated their relationship is in the future. The whole like Batman and Catwoman situation. It's like, I mean, they've had a very complicated relationship, you know, where they are now. It's just Selena and Bruce. That's just going to get even more complicated later on. That's where I'll be so interested to see where they would be in this continuity, because they are in such a good place now. Plus, she would probably know he's Batman, you know, ahead of time in this continuity. Just like Jerome would know ahead of time that Bruce is Batman too. I would assume Gordon would too. But I mean, it's just kind of an interesting thought to have with all of that. But nevertheless. But for Bruce, he was having the thought that maybe he should leave Gotham, because for him, he feels like he's caused this place. I mean, it's one thing that Wayne Manor is gone, but for him, maybe it's kind of that's a sign that he's supposed to move, because for him, it's like the last like piece of the Wayne name, I guess in a sense, is still there. But for him, it's like, because it blowing up might be a sign that like maybe he's not supposed to stick around, because like him being around brings nothing but trouble to Gotham, whether it be like Gallivan or Ra's al Ghul, you know. I mean, because I guess that kind of, well, because to be fair, the Court of Owls was always kind of there, already there, so that wasn't necessarily on him. And it didn't come up, but I'm sure, like, you can make the argument the whole Jerome's and or, you know, Jeremiah situation is all because of him, too. Well, just because both of them became obsessed with him, so it's like, yeah. I mean, especially because Jeremiah did everything helping blow up the bridges and stuff like that because of Bruce, you know, because of his obsession. I also like that moment where like Bruce and Selena had a fight like that, which is just kind of interesting, because like they're about to show down. I'm like, oh, that's so interesting, just because it's like, you know, Batman and Catwoman kind of have, you know, confrontations like that. But I also love that like Selena kind of got a little personal in the fight, because she was like, the fact of the matter is you're going to leave us here in Gotham without you. It's like Gotham's not going to be the same. The city, you know, isn't, you know, what it is without you in it. And she's punching him in the face, and he's like, Selena, I'm okay. I'm off of Ivy's spell. And she's like, oh, I'm so sorry. It was just, I don't know why. That just kind of made me go, I don't know why. It was just kind of funny to me. There's a lot of interesting conversations that come up too, like the whole Barbara situation. I think is fascinating, because for Lee, it's kind of like, yeah, this is already going to be a hard situation because, you know, Barbara's a psychopath. But which I will admit, I feel like Barbara isn't nearly the psychopath that she was before. I say probably seasons 2 and 3, well, 1, 2, and 3 is like where her psychopath was kind of like at its max. After the whole, you know, Ra's al Ghul bringing her back, you know, in season 4. I felt like she's kind of calmed down. She still has her issues and everything. She's kind of criminal, but I feel like she's not nearly as crazy as she was before. It's like she has her, you know, moments. It's just kind of interesting. And, you know, that's what Lee kind of feels about that. But it's also like, you can tell that Barbara on some level does still care about Jim, because no matter what happens, I think there's always this kind of ties that bind both of them together, especially even more so in this regard. Like I said, it's just interesting because things kind of go full circle in many different regards when it comes to Jim, whether it be the whole Barbara situation or whether it be the whole Lee situation. Because I like the Lee situation because she had a conversation with Alfred, and for Alfred, he talks about the whole conversation of like, you know, he, you know, never thought he'd have kids, but until the day he saw Bruce in that alleyway, you know, scared to death. And for him, it's like, he never expected things to be the way they are, but like he's like, we're not bound by blood, but anytime Bruce is using something I taught him, or he laughs at a joke only between us, it's moments like that that make it, you know, it's like makes it shine of like, this is my son, this is my boy, you know. And I thought that was kind of a sweet sentiment, and even telling Lee that, you know, when it's all said and done, that their child, boy or girl, is going to be phenomenal, and is going to be because of her, and that she will be a great mother. And I thought that was kind of nice. Once again, it seems like they're like things are playing out the way I kind of thought they potentially might. It's a situation of, yeah, that's definitely going to be Barbara Gordon, but what's going to be interesting is probably going to be like, she's going to be raised by Lee, just because I feel like, you know, either Barbara's going to die and she, you know, asks Jim and Lee to look after the baby. Well, they're already going to. Like I said, it's kind of this like family triangle situation, but I kind of get a feeling like it'd be interesting if we end up finding out Barbara's going to be in the baby's life, but I doubt it. Like, I get the feeling like something's going to happen to Barbara by the end of this. It might be something either Bane slash Eduardo slash, you know, or, you know, Walker. Like, it's going to have something to do with them potentially, and Barbara might die. Maybe it's a childbirth thing. Maybe it's a combination. I don't know. If she ends up being in the child's life, I'm actually going to be surprised. I'm like, oh, that's going to be interesting. Because I think that added an interesting element if you did keep her in there, like being the criminal she is. And just, you know, Barbara would probably have that duality of like, oh, you know, seeking justice, you know, having parents like Lee and Jim, even as conflicted as Jim is, but they're kind of on the right side of things, and having a criminal mom, like biological mom. I think that'd be kind of an interesting aspect for her to kind of have to deal with. So, I don't know. That's where my mind is on that. But it did seem like Barbara was trying to do good, because it's like, oh, she's trying to hold things down while Jim, you know, is away. But I think it's also like she gives it the excuse of being like, well, if we do this, it's a backup plan just in case Ed isn't able to get the submarine going, that we can, you know, be in Jim's good graces when it's all said and done, you know. So, but Penguin kind of points it out later on. It's like, no, because you were hoping that Jim would see you more than a criminal, which he doesn't. And the fact of the matter is, you know, he's essentially kind of pointing out that Jim might try and take the baby from her, which, once again, Jim's kind of made it clear he wouldn't do that, because the fact of the matter is, no matter what Barbara's situation is, no matter how complicated it is, you're still the baby's mother, and he'd never take you away from. Even though with the whole Lee situation, you kind of, I'm sure that's going to make Barbara feel it even more of like, yep, he's going to try and take the baby and just raise it as their own. So, but I think, you know, it's definitely going to be interesting to see how that really plays out, because Barbara plans to run with the baby, even if Jim comes chasing her all across the world to get the baby back. He's like, let him try, you know. So it's going to be interesting to see. But I think she doesn't have anything to worry about. But I think because she's so afraid that Jim, when he looks at her, sees a criminal, which he does, but I think he's willing to give her another chance, because she's kind of proven herself bits here and there. Like I said, it's just like after everything they've been through over the course of the series, you know, like I said, there's always been moments where you kind of feel like I said, that connection, that there was still something there. You know, even when Jim's kind of going on his, like, Vision Quest type of things, like, Barbara's always kind of been there in some shape or form, and that's kind of hinted at me, like, you know, she's always there somewhere playing some role for Jim in his head or in his heart, you know? So that's where I'm at in that, so. I did like to kind of show that her criminal side of things, her way of handling things, is like, oh yeah, she ended up poisoning all the people. It's like, oh yeah, that dude's dead now. So all of you go back to your own respective places and keep the peace, or all of you are going to die, you know, because I poisoned you and you have 48 hours, and then I'll give you antidotes later and stuff like that. So that's that. Then there's the whole Lee shooting Ivy. That was the last time we saw her. She managed to escape. I guess Victor's ass is just kind of locked up. Considering everything, but still. But we did have that sweet moment, you know, of like, you know, Lee and oh yeah, I'm almost completely, before I even get to the sweet stuff, because let's kind of save that for later. It's like also like the main part of the episode I haven't even talked about was like the trial itself. I was curious, like when I saw the title of the episode, Trial of Jim Gordon, I was like, is that like a I didn't know whether that meant literally like a lot of his stuff from the past has come back and everyone's trying to charge him for it. I thought something like that, kind of like a Sophia Falcone, like a lot of secrets she knew about the pig and stuff like that. But it's like, which, it's funny I say that, but nevertheless, no, but it was all kind of inside his head. But basically, he was being tried by his own guilt because he felt guilty about everything that he's done, like especially to Lee. He blames himself the most when it comes to Lee, because for like he's caused nothing but trouble for Lee, the heartbreak, the losing a baby, killing her fiance. That was a conflict. Like, it's just, there's always complications, and it's like, would the world be better off with Jim Gordon being dead? Would Lee be better off? And she's like, I'm sorry, but he brings death to everything he touches. Then it's like not being able to save people, like, and I brought that up earlier, like the guilt of like, that's the thing, like Jim is harboring all of that. He doesn't share it with anyone. That's what motivates him. That's what pushes him so hard, like I said, to go to the extremes that he does, because he feels guilty over the people he wasn't able to protect, the people he hurts, in this particular case, Lee, you know. I even thought it was kind of neat how he's in there, and he's seeing all these different people. I couldn't remember her name. I think it just hit me. Catherine, the lady with the Court of Owls mask. I was like, what was her name again? I couldn't remember, but it just clicked in my head. I'm pretty sure her name was Catherine. She was there. Pig was there. Ed, Penguin, like, you know, other police people, I guess from Arkham, because of the clothes and stuff like that. So it's just kind of like awake celebrating Jim, and you know, he's like the last person there is Will, and so it's him deciding, like, does he want to live or die? Because at first he wasn't really sure, because there was a part of him that's like, maybe everyone would be better off if I'm dead. But it's like, no, I've got to be there for that child. I got to be there for Lee. It's like the scariest thing for him is like trying to go through. He doesn't think he'd be able to do any of it without Lee, you know. And luckily, all that was able to kind of bring him back to her and everything. So, and lo and behold, they get married at the end. I love it. Jim, you know, Harvey being like, Jim, you're my best friend. Actually, you're my only friend. And Lee, you know, these two have always had each other's back, except for the time that she was, you know, infected with the virus and tried to kill him. But hey, that's love. And I'm like, I love it. It's just this big moment and everything. And just, it's, you know, it's just kind of good to kind of see, like, obviously it's not the ending, but it's like a little happy ending in that regard. And I love that Bruce took that time, you know, turns to Selena and kisses her. And it's like, love is in the air. And it's like, yay. And then like the whole Barbara and Penguin thing happened, just to kind of like make you go dun 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 type of, you know, just the opposite side of like, yeah, all this happiness over here, and there's all the villains scheming to do stuff. So now that's interesting. I brought them up earlier, but we have not seen Bane and Walker. They've been kicking around Gotham. Then, you know, obviously like Ed, Barbara and Penguin have that whole submarine situation going on. So I am very, very interested to see what the next episode has in store for us with all of this. You know, it's like, hey, Jim's kind of on the way to being happy. Bruce on the way to being happy, you know, we've only got like a couple episodes left, 3. Like I said, unless something changed, like there should only be 12 episodes this season, so we only got 3 episodes left. So I am very curious to see what they're doing, because they are moving that timeline across, because like the moment we saw Barbara in this episode, she had a bump. I was like, oh wow, last time we saw her, she wasn't really showing. Maybe she wasn't, I didn't notice it last time, but this time I'm definitely noticed it. And it's like, now it's been another month later, like before they got married, so it's like, oh yeah. So that's interesting. So I'm very interested to see, as this series is winding down, to see what the rest of the season has in store for us, but in particular what the next episode has in store for us. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.